Hello. My name is Celine Maxwell, and my family never saw me, at least, not for who I was. But today, I walked away. I chose freedom over loyalty, silence over the endless manipulation. And the hardest part, letting them think they still had control. The house was quiet except for the faint sound of the kitchen clock ticking. It was a crisp winter day in Chicago, the kind where the cold from outside seems to settle in every corner of your mind. The table was set for my birthday dinner, but there was no festive air in the room. No balloons, no excitement, just a perfect setup of china and silverware, ready for the celebration that never felt like it belonged to me. I sat at the dining table, watching my family as they went through the motions of another birthday, my birthday, but I might as well have been invisible. The dim chandelier above cast shadows that stretched across the table, but they didn't feel like the warm embrace of a celebration. They felt like the weight of the expectations that always hung over me. My father, Richard, was sitting across from me, his face glowing with the kind of happiness that only came when Amelia was in the room. He looked proud, radiant, as he handed her the small velvet box with a flourish. It was the kind of moment you expect from a father who wants to give his daughter the world. He smiled as Amelia opened the box, revealing the sparkling blue diamond ring. I watched her face light up, the way she clutched the ring to her chest, the way her eyes sparkled with joy. For a second, I almost wished I could feel the same. I almost wished that, just for one moment, I could be the one being looked at like that. But as I sat there, my fingers curled around the $2 bill my mother handed me with a small, almost mocking smile, I felt the bitter sting of reality. Amelia was everything that I wasn't. And at that moment, it became clearer than ever that no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be seen in the same light. My mother's voice broke through my thoughts, warm and dismissive, as she leaned over and smirked at me. "You should be grateful, Celine," she said, handing me the money like it was some kind of reward. Her words weren't just condescending, they were a slap in the face. Gratitude makes life richer. Appreciate the little things. I nodded, the warmth in her voice completely lost on me. I knew the drill by now. This was just another lesson in humility, another reminder that I wasn't the one who mattered. The perfect daughter always got the rewards, always got the love. And I was just the one who kept the family running in the background. I should have been used to this by now. I sat back in my chair, the faintest smile playing on my lips as I tucked the crumpled bill into my pocket. It wasn't the gift that bothered me, it was the lecture, the tone, the reminder that no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. As I sat there, the $2 felt heavier than anything I'd ever been given. I stood up slowly, excusing myself from the table. The conversation was still going on behind me, but I was already gone, lost in the depths of my own thoughts. I couldn't help but wonder, what if I wasn't part of this family at all? What if I had been replaced by Amelia, a better, more charming version of everything I could never be? The moment I stepped into the hallway, I realized it wasn't just the ring. It wasn't just the $2. It was everything. It was the way my family treated me, like I was invisible, like I existed to serve their needs, never to be loved, never to be seen. My heart sank, and for the first time in years, I didn't want to go back to that table. I didn't want to go back to being the background character in my own life. I just smiled and walked away, I muttered to myself, feeling the weight of my own silence. But deep down, I knew nothing would change unless I did something about it. The next few days passed in a haze. I kept to my room, unable to face my family. They tried to reach out, but I ignored their calls. They probably thought I was just being dramatic, maybe even moody, but they had no idea. They didn't know how it felt to be sidelined every single time, to always be the one holding everything together but never being noticed. I spent hours sitting by my desk, reading over old journals and notes I had kept hidden away. They were reminders of all the times I had tried to prove myself, to show my worth. But every effort had always fallen short. I wasn't the perfect daughter. I wasn't the one who was loved just for existing. I looked at the letter I had written. I had been thinking about sending it for days now, but the thought of confronting them, of putting my emotions out there for them to see, made me hesitate. But in the end, I knew I had to do it. I had to tell them the truth, the one they refused to see. I took a deep breath and hit send. The phone sat on the desk in front of me, vibrating relentlessly, and for a moment, I considered ignoring it again. I wasn't ready to talk to them. Not now, not after everything that had happened. But then the sound of the name on the screen stopped me. Deanne. I picked it up before it could ring again, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly I could feel my pulse in the tips of my fingers. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then came her voice, the same soft, controlled tone, but now, it carried a subtle edge, something I hadn't heard in a long time. "Celine," she said, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just humiliated me a few days ago in front of the entire family. "We need to talk. I think it's time we clear the air. I'm sure you're angry, but I want you to know it's all about family, sweetie. It's time you learned that." I clenched my jaw so hard I could feel the tension in my neck. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't want to explode at her. Not yet. "Family," I said, my voice too steady for the rage I felt brewing. "Family is about respect, isn't it, Mom? How do you think I felt when you handed me $2 on my birthday while you gave Amelia a diamond ring? And then, you had the audacity to lecture me about gratitude." There was a brief silence, and for a second, I thought she might hang up. But then she sighed, a long, drawn-out breath. "I know you're upset. But you need to understand, we did it because we love you. We thought you didn't want anything big, Celine. I thought you'd be happy with what I gave you." I could feel my chest tighten. The words felt like knives, each one aimed directly at the fragile parts of me I'd worked so hard to ignore. The parts of me that had been invisible to them for years. "Happy," I said, my voice faltering despite myself. "You gave me $2, and you told me to be grateful. You never saw me, not really. You only saw what I could do for you." I could hear her soft intake of breath. The silence on the other end stretched, like a thread pulled too taut. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she finally said. "But you need to come to dinner. We need to sit down and talk about this. The family is falling apart without you. Don't you want to fix things?" Fix things. The words echoed in my head, and for a moment, I could almost hear the years of frustration and resentment in them. How many times had I been the one to fix things? How many times had I put everything aside for them, only for my needs to be brushed aside? "I'm not coming back, Mom," I said, my voice colder now. "I'm done trying to fix things that I didn't break. You and Dad. You made your choices. You chose Amelia." The line went quiet again, and I knew she was struggling to find the words to say next. But there was nothing more to be said. She didn't understand. She would never understand. "I have to go, Mom," I said, my voice sharp and final. "Goodbye." I hung up before she could say anything else, my hand still gripping the phone tightly as if it might slip from my grasp if I didn't hold on to it with all my strength. I sat there in silence for a moment, the room too quiet, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I had made the call. I had finally told her what I needed to say, but the guilt gnawed at me. Would they ever see me? Or would I remain the invisible daughter who only existed to fix their problems? I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to shake the doubt that was creeping in. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done being the one who was always expected to give, to sacrifice, without ever being seen or appreciated. The phone buzzed again, and I saw Amelia's name flash across the screen. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the button to decline. I already knew what she would say. She would tell me to forgive them, to come back and fix things, just like our mother had. She wouldn't understand. She never had. But still, I couldn't bring myself to ignore her completely. I answered, but there was no warmth in my tone. Celine, I don't get it. Why are you doing this? Amelia's voice was tight, filled with frustration. Mom's really upset. Dad's barely holding it together. Why won't you just talk to them? You're tearing the family apart. Tearing the family apart. It wasn't the first time I'd heard those words. But this time, it didn't hurt. This time, I was free. I'm not tearing anything apart, I said, my voice unwavering. I'm just letting go of what was never mine to hold. I'm not your fixer, Amelia. I'm not anyone's fixer anymore. I could hear her on the other end of the line, her breath catching as if she didn't quite know how to respond. There was a long silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer now. I just don't understand why you have to do this. You've always been the strong one, Celine. But you don't have to do this on your own. I wanted to say something, to explain it all to her, but I knew I couldn't. She would never understand. She didn't know what it was like to be the one who was always seen as the responsible one, the perfect one. She had always been the one who could get away with everything, while I was left to clean up the mess. I'm done, I said, the finality in my voice clear. I'm done being the strong one, done trying to fix things that are broken. You'll have to figure it out without me. I hung up before she could respond. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the city below. The wind had picked up, sending the trees in the park across the street swaying, their leaves catching the fading light of the day. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight in my chest begin to lift, the heavy knot of resentment starting to unravel. But as the wind rattled the window behind me, I couldn't help but wonder what my family would do next. How long would they keep coming after me? How far would they go to get me back? I didn't know the answer. But I did know this, I wasn't going back. I stared at the phone in my hand, knowing it was only a matter of time before they'd call. I could feel the tension in my chest, the weight of the letter I had sent, now settling in the pit of my stomach. A few days had passed since I hit send, and the silence that followed had been more deafening than I expected. The phone hadn't rung, the house had stayed eerily still, and yet, I could feel their anger swirling, thick and unspoken. The family I had known, the family I had been a part of for so long, was already beginning to fracture. The phone buzzed again, dragging me out of my thoughts. Amelia's name flashed across the screen. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I set the phone down slowly, my fingers trembling slightly as I ran a hand through my hair. Part of me still wanted to reach out to her. Part of me still wanted to hear the voice of the sister I grew up with, even though she was part of the same system that had kept me in the shadows. I loved her. I did. But she would never understand. Not yet. I stood up and paced across the room, unable to sit still. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something I wasn't ready for. But this time, I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I thought I'd be ready for this. But why does it still feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff? The phone rang again, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Diane's number. My stomach tightened. I wanted to ignore it, to let it go to voicemail. But I knew I couldn't. I picked up the phone, pressing it to my ear. Celine, we need to talk, Diane's voice said, steady but somehow frail. I understand you're upset, but we can't have this hanging over us. You need to come home. You need to fix this. I swallowed the lump in my throat, pushing down the frustration building inside me. The same words, over and over. Fix it. Fix the broken family. Fix the pieces they broke, but never once acknowledged. I'm not coming home, Mom, I said, my voice colder than I intended. I'm done fixing things for you. A pause. You're really going to leave us like this? She asked, her voice faltering. You've done this before, Celine. You've always been the one who kept everything together, the one who kept the family standing. We can't do this without you. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling a wave of exhaustion sweep over me. It had always been this way. Always me, always the one keeping things from falling apart. But what about me? Who had kept me together? The guilt crept in again, but I shut it out. I was done. I can't fix this anymore. Not for you, not for anyone. I'm not coming back. Her voice became more frantic. You can't just walk away, Celine. This is your family. We need you. I could hear her sniffling, the muffled sound of her breath catching as if she might break down. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. I'm not your solution, Mom, I said firmly. I never was. You need to figure this out without me. I hung up before she could say anything else. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it slow me down. This was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it felt like the only choice I had left. I turned around and grabbed the letter from my desk. The weight of it was still heavy in my hands. It was the final thing I'd done, finally saying everything I had wanted to say for years, everything I'd kept buried deep inside. The letter was short, direct, but it said everything. I had explained what I had given, what I had sacrificed, and how none of it had ever been acknowledged. I had laid out all the ways they had used me, manipulated me, and expected me to keep giving without ever truly seeing me. But I had also left one thing unsaid: I was never coming back. I wasn't going to be the daughter who always fixed everything. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I was finally choosing me. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was Amelia. I couldn't bring myself to pick up. She would be the hardest one to let go of. She had always been my sister, the one I confided in when we were younger. But as we grew older, something changed. She became the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, and I became the one who held everything together. And maybe that was okay, once. But not anymore. The phone buzzed again. Amelia, I can't keep doing this, I whispered to myself. I need to let go. But as I stood there, staring at my phone, I could still feel the remnants of guilt eating at me. Was I doing the right thing? Would they understand, or would they just see me as the one who tore everything apart? I didn't know. I walked to the window, staring out at the city as it shimmered in the fading light. There was still a part of me that wanted to go back. To be with my family again. But the truth was clearer now. My family would never change. I couldn't make them. They had broken me down over the years, and I had let them. But now, I was free. I had made my choice, and I was done. In the days after I'd sent that letter, a quiet had settled over the apartment, the kind of quiet that makes you feel the weight of everything you've ever avoided. The kind that fills the empty spaces left by the people you've walked away from, the voices of the family you've cut off, the noise of the expectations that once rang in your ears. I didn't know how long it would last, this silence. I wasn't sure if it was peace or just a calm before a storm. But I had to give it time to breathe without the constant hum of my family's neediness in the background. Time to finally think clearly, without someone else's emotional baggage hanging over me. I wasn't sure if I'd ever fully be able to let go, but the apartment, small and humble, was mine. It was the first time in my life I didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes still waiting to be unpacked. The apartment was so new, so foreign, and yet, it felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived. There was a sense of freedom in the mess, the only mess that was mine. The city skyline outside my window glinted with the late afternoon sun, a silent witness to my quiet rebellion. But with that freedom came the ever-present fear of what was to come. I could leave my family behind, but the shadows of guilt still loomed over me. As I dug through the boxes, trying to find something to distract me, my eyes landed on the photo album, the one I'd been dreading. I hadn't touched it since I moved in, but now, with a hand that was almost trembling, I reached for it. I opened it slowly, almost unwilling to face the past, but I couldn't stop myself. The first few pages were filled with images of me as a little girl, smiling, laughing, living in a world that now seemed so distant, so foreign. And then came the pictures of Amelia. Always the bright, shiny child, the one with the perfect smile and the bright future. I was always the shadow, the one left behind, never quite fitting into the picture. I could feel the weight of the past, but I wasn't sure I was ready to leave it behind yet. I shut the album, forcing myself to look away. I was done. I had to be done. I couldn't keep looking back at what they had taken from me. I needed to focus on moving forward, but the guilt gnawed at me. The phone buzzed on the table beside me, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Amelia. I had expected it. She wouldn't give up on me that easily. She'd never understand. She couldn't. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I sat there in the stillness, staring at the screen. A part of me wanted to pick up and explain everything. I wanted her to understand, to see me for who I was. But there was no point. She had her life, her perfect little world, and I had mine now. But then the phone rang again. I knew it was Diane this time. The silence was broken, and the pressure of everything I had done came crashing back. I took a deep breath before answering. Celine. Diane's voice was cold, but there was an underlying desperation there. You've done enough damage. I want you to come home and fix this. This is your family, and you're tearing us apart. I sat there, feeling the heat rise in my chest. The same manipulative words, the same plea for me to come back and fix everything they had broken. I wanted to shout, to scream at her, to tell her everything I had been holding back for so long. But I knew that wouldn't help. She wouldn't listen. She never did. You think I'm wrong? You think I've never given enough? Diane's voice cracked, but there was something beneath her words, something like anger or fear, like she knew she was losing control. I've given everything for you, Celine. Everything. I paused, my heart racing. The old patterns were trying to creep back in. I could feel it, like the familiar pull of an old wound trying to heal itself with more of the same treatment that had caused the damage in the first place. But I was done. I had to be. I don't owe you anything. You've already taken enough from me. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I hung up before she could say anything else. For a moment, I just sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, my breath heavy in my chest. There was a tightness in my throat, the kind that comes with regret and loss, but I refused to let it consume me. I had already made my choice. There was no going back. I couldn't be the one who always fixed everything, who always gave until there was nothing left for myself. The silence in the apartment was different now, heavier in a way. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of freedom anymore. It was the loneliness that came with finally taking control of my life. And that was something I had to get used to. The phone rang again, and I let it go to voicemail. It was Amelia again. I was getting tired of hearing the same things. She had no idea. She couldn't possibly understand what I had been through. I didn't know how many times I had been asked to fix things for them. And this time, I was done. But as I stood up and walked across the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that my family wasn't going to stop. Diane would keep calling, would keep trying to manipulate me, just like she always had. And Amelia, she'd never be able to understand what I needed from her. I grabbed my coat and headed out the door. The city felt different now, as though the weight of everything that had happened had shifted. The cold air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, but it didn't bother me. It was like I could breathe again. Finally, I was free. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment. Not yet. Not until I could clear my mind and figure out what came next. I walked down the street, my thoughts swirling. I thought about how I had always been the one who tried to hold everything together, the one who kept the family from falling apart. But they weren't going to be able to fix themselves this time. I wasn't going to fix them anymore. The call from Richard hit me like a blow to the chest, a hollow sound that left my ears ringing and my heart racing. It had only been a few weeks since I'd sent the letter, since I'd made the decision to leave, but now, hearing his voice on the other end of the line, I felt all the old doubts creeping back in. I thought I was ready for this. But why does it still feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff? Celine, we need to talk. Richard's voice trembled slightly, but there was something more to it now. Desperation. He wasn't the same detached father I'd grown up with. He sounded like a man who had finally realized the weight of everything he'd taken for granted. The house, the bills, everything's falling apart. We can't do this without you. You have to come home. My fingers tightened around the phone, the anger rising within me again. He wasn't calling because he cared about me. He was calling because he was desperate. His family, his perfect family, was unraveling, and he needed me to fix it. The pattern repeated itself like clockwork. The same manipulation, the same guilt-tripping. I wasn't ready to fix everything again. Richard, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, I can't help you anymore. There was a long pause, followed by the sound of Richard's heavy breathing, like he was trying to hold on to something. But I wasn't going to let him pull me back in. You're the one who holds us all together, Celine. Why aren't you helping us now? His words cracked at the edges. I can't fix this without you. Don't you care about the family? I wasn't the glue anymore. I wasn't the one who held everything together. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I've been holding it together for years, Dad, I said, my voice now firm, but not anymore. You need to figure this out on your own. I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence in the room felt different now. It was no longer just a void. It was filled with the weight of what I had just done, the final severing of ties that I'd spent so many years pretending didn't hurt. But it was too late to go back. I was done. A few hours later, I sat in the same chair by the window, staring at the skyline outside. The city was alive with lights, people rushing about their day, but all I could focus on was the empty space inside me. I hadn't expected this much pain. I hadn't expected to feel so alone. Then the phone rang again. It was Amelia. Her name flashed across the screen, and for a moment, I felt like I might break. I could feel my chest tighten, the familiar knot of guilt and love mixed into one overwhelming wave. I hesitated, but then, with a deep breath, I pressed the button to answer. Celine. Amelia's voice came through, soft but filled with something else. Desperation. I don't get it. Why are you doing this? Why are you leaving us? Her words stung, and I tried to stay calm, but all I could feel was the same manipulation, the same plea to make everything right again, to be the one who picked up the pieces. I'm not leaving, Amelia, I said, my voice steady, but underneath it, there was a bitterness I couldn't hide. I'm finally choosing myself. I'm choosing me. You can't just do that, she said, her voice rising, her frustration obvious. Mom and Dad are falling apart without you. Don't you see what you've done? We need you, Celine. I let her words wash over me, but the more she spoke, the clearer it became. She didn't understand. She couldn't. Amelia had always been the one to get everything handed to her. She was the one who was loved just for being her. And I was the one who had to earn it, work for it, sacrifice. I'm not a fixer, Amelia, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I'm not your tool, not your emotional crutch anymore. You need to learn to live without me. I've been the one holding everything together, but I can't do it anymore. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, the weight of the truth sinking in. Please, don't do this, she whispered, the words breaking in her throat. But it was too late. She couldn't save me. And I wasn't sure she even wanted to. I have to go, Amelia, I said softly. Take care of yourself. I hung up, the finality of it settling over me like a heavy fog. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt empowered. The night passed in a blur of thoughts and emotions. My mind kept racing through everything, my childhood, my family, the years of trying to be good enough, trying to be the one who always put everyone else first. But not anymore. The next day, I found myself standing in front of my laptop, staring at the screen. I had written the letter to my family, but it felt like there was one more thing I needed to do. One final step in reclaiming my life, in breaking free. I pulled up the legal documents I had been avoiding, the ones I had set aside for so long. The family's finances were a mess, and it wasn't just about the emotional manipulation. The money I'd been sending to help them had been used without my consent, without even a thank you. They had taken from me for years, and now it was time to take something back. I clicked open the folder and started scanning through the details. The more I read, the more I realized that I had been more than just a silent supporter. I had been manipulated into thinking I had no choice but to help. I knew now that the only way to move forward was to confront the truth. I was never just the good daughter. I was the one who was always expected to fix their problems, but I was never allowed to be myself. The phone rang again, breaking my thoughts. I looked at the screen. Diane. This time, I didn't hesitate. I pressed the button. Celine, Diane's voice was calmer now, but there was still an underlying edge to it. You don't understand what you've done. You're breaking us apart. We're not the same without you. My heart skipped, but I took a deep breath, refusing to let her manipulate me anymore. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice clear and steady. I'm not the one who's been holding you together. You've always relied on me to fix things, but I'm done doing that. You need to figure it out on your own. There was a long silence on the other end, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fill it with words. I wasn't going back. Not this time. I'm not coming back, Mom. I'm done, I said firmly. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was liberating. I've been holding it all together for years, I whispered to myself, walking away from the phone. But not anymore. As the door clicked shut behind me, the city's hum seemed to drift further away. My mind swirled, but something deep inside felt clear, final. The decision I'd made a few weeks ago, the one that had pulled me away from everything I knew, had not been easy. But in that moment, as I stood in the silence of my small apartment, the weight of the choice settled over me like a warm blanket. This was my life now. I thought the quiet would be peaceful, but instead, it felt heavy. The stillness felt like a reminder of all that I had lost, and all that I had yet to reclaim. The walls around me felt like a sanctuary, yes, but they also felt empty, echoing with the weight of my past and the looming pressure of what was to come. The weight of my family's disapproval, the guilt that clung to me, like static, refusing to leave no matter how much I tried to brush it off. I sat down at my desk, my eyes flicking to the old photo album I had reluctantly placed on the shelf. I had ignored it for days, telling myself I didn't need to look back. But there was a pull in it, a weight that I couldn't deny. I knew if I opened it, the past would rush back. It was a temptation I couldn't resist. The first page of the album showed a picture of me when I was about 10, my face young, full of hope, a smile so genuine that even I almost believed it. But the smile didn't last long. I flipped through the pages quickly, not wanting to relive all the moments that had defined me. There were pictures of birthday parties where I wasn't the star of the show, of holidays where the attention always seemed to land on Amelia, my twin sister, the golden child. And then, the more I looked, the more the memories flooded in. The first time I realized how little I mattered to my family. When I was about 16, I was sitting in the living room, diligently working on my homework. Mom and Dad were talking about the future, about what they expected from us. The words still echoed in my ears as if they were just spoken. Amelia will go to a great college. She's got that spark, you know. Diane had said, her voice warm, proud. But Celine, she's just reliable. She'll go to school, work hard, do the right thing. But Amelia, she has potential. That was the moment it hit me, the realization that I had never been the one who mattered. Not to my parents. Not to my family. I was just the one who made everything work. But no one ever saw me. Not really. I set the album down with a sigh, the weight of the past pressing against my chest. I had been invisible for so long. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. The phone rang again, dragging me from my thoughts. I stared at it for a moment, the screen showing Amelia's name. I had expected this. She had tried to call me a few times before, but each time, I ignored it. What could I say? That I was better off without them. That I was done. How could I explain the years of sacrifice, of being the one who always held it all together, only to be pushed aside when it didn't suit them? I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Celine, Amelia's voice cracked as soon as she spoke. Why are you doing this? Why are you leaving us like this? Mom and Dad are so upset. They're falling apart. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. The words were the same, just like they had always been. I could hear the underlying accusation. It was my fault they were falling apart. It was always me. And I hated how easy it was for her to twist it that way. I'm not the one breaking the family, Amelia. I'm just finally choosing to walk away from what was never mine to fix, I said, my voice firm, despite the twinge of guilt creeping in. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. You don't get it, Amelia said, frustration thick in her tone. You've always been the one who made everything right. You were the one who made everything work, and now you're just leaving. You think this is easy for any of us? I don't think it's easy for any of us, I said, shaking my head, my voice quieter now. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the one who holds everything together while everyone else gets the love. I can't be the fixer anymore. It's not healthy. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, but no words came out. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I didn't need to. I'd heard all the excuses before. They needed me. They couldn't function without me. But I had been so tired of being the one to clean up their mess, to keep everything from crumbling. It wasn't my job. I was ready to stand up for myself. I'm not coming back, Amelia, I said, this time with finality in my voice. You'll have to figure it out without me. Please, she started, but I didn't let her finish. I'll always love you, but I have to do this for me, I said softly. Take care of yourself, okay? And then I hung up. I sat there for a while, my hand still holding the phone. I didn't know what I had expected from Amelia. Maybe a tearful apology. Maybe a plea for me to come back. But none of that had come. Instead, it was just a reminder of how alone I had felt in this family for so long. I wasn't sure if I had made the right choice, but it didn't matter anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. The doorbell rang, cutting through the quiet of the apartment. I stood up, wondering who it could be. The moment I opened the door, I saw Diane standing there, her expression tight. Behind her, Richard stood looking uncomfortable, his hands shoved in his pockets. "You're not answering our calls," Diane said, her voice low but urgent. "We need to talk, Celine." My heart sank. There it was. I wasn't surprised. I had been waiting for this. They were coming to make me fix everything again. "Mom, I'm not coming back," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We're falling apart without you," Diane said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You have to come back, Celine. You have to fix this. I'm not your fixer anymore. I am done." I could feel the finality of the words as they left my mouth, and something inside me shifted. The past, all the pain, all the manipulation, they were behind me now. They had nothing left to hold over me. I didn't expect them to give up that easily. I knew that my decision to walk away had consequences. But what I didn't anticipate was just how far they'd go to drag me back into their world, a world I had spent so long trying to escape. The phone rang again. This time, it wasn't just a call, it was the sound of the family pulling me back into the storm they had created. I had been the glue holding them together for so long. But now I was the one they blamed for their unraveling. I picked up the phone, staring at the screen. It was Diane, and I knew exactly what this was about. Another attempt to manipulate me, to guilt-trip me into coming back. She was probably in tears again, playing the victim card, trying to make me feel like the world was falling apart because of my decision. The sound of her voice was always so soothing, so convincing. But I had learned to tune out the manipulation. "Celine," she said, her voice strained but trying to remain composed, "we need to talk. This can't go on like this. You need to fix this, come home. You're the only one who can save us." The weight of her words settled on me, and I clenched the phone, feeling the rush of frustration surge through my chest. I had spent years fixing things for them, bending over backward, sacrificing myself for a family that didn't even see me for who I was. And now, when they were on the verge of losing everything, they wanted me to come back and do it all over again. Fix it. Fix them. "I'm done, Mom," I said, my voice colder than I intended, but I didn't care. "I'm not coming back. You can't just call me up every time you need me to clean up your mess." "Celine," Diane's voice cracked, desperation creeping in, "you're the one who keeps this family together. You can't just walk away like this. You think I don't love you? I've done everything for you, for this family." For a moment, I thought I might crack. There was a tiny voice in the back of my mind that told me to go back, to help them one last time. The guilt was overwhelming, but it only lasted a second before I remembered why I left in the first place. I wasn't a fixer anymore. I wasn't their savior. "I don't need you to love me, Mom," I said, forcing the words out as firmly as I could. "I need you to understand that I can't keep living for you. I've given everything, and you still don't see me. Not for who I am. Just for what I can do." There was a long silence on the other end. For a moment, I thought she might say something else, but she didn't. She just let the silence hang, a bitter reminder that there was no going back. "I'm done pretending," I said softly, but firmly. "I'm not coming back. Not this time." I hung up, the finality of it settling deep within me. For a long time, I'd been scared to cut ties with them, scared to let go of the idea of family, but now I realized something. Family wasn't supposed to be something that drained you. Family was supposed to be the people who lifted you up, who saw you, not just for what you did for them, but for who you were. I didn't pick it up. This time, it was Amelia. I had already said everything I needed to say to her. She wasn't the problem. She had always been the good daughter. The one who could do no wrong. But that didn't change the fact that she didn't see me. She didn't see the years of emotional labor I had put into our family, years I would never get back. I had to make peace with the fact that she wouldn't understand, not now, maybe not ever. I sat there for a moment, my mind racing with everything I had just said, everything I had just let go. And then, like a wave crashing over me, the weight of my decision came down all at once. Was this really it? Was I finally free? The feeling was as liberating as it was terrifying. I closed my eyes, and I was back there. Back in the kitchen, sitting at the table when I was about 12. I was trying so hard to be the perfect daughter. It was another family dinner, another attempt to get my parents' attention. I could remember the way they looked at Amelia as she sat there, effortlessly charming, smiling like she had the world at her feet. And then, there was me. I was always the one who did the right thing, the one who stayed quiet, worked hard, never asked for much. It wasn't that I didn't want attention, it was that I was used to never getting it. I remember trying to tell them about my day, about how I had worked hard to finish my school projects, but Diane's eyes glazed over as she praised Amelia's artistic talents. I had tried. I had always tried. Celine, you're the responsible one, my mother said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But you know, Amelia has that spark, that magic, don't you think? I sat there, feeling the sting of being reduced to responsible. It was the first time I realized how little I was truly valued by them. I wasn't enough. I wasn't the one they saw when they talked about potential. Amelia was their star. I was just the one who cleaned up after everyone. And right there, in that kitchen, that's when I knew. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I gave, I would never be enough. I wasn't the daughter they wanted. I was the one they could control. A knock on the door pulled me back from my memories. My heart skipped as I stood up and made my way to the door. I already knew who it was. Diane and Richard had come to confront me. I had seen it coming, even if I'd hoped it wouldn't happen. They were desperate. I opened the door, and there they stood, my parents, looking like strangers in their own home. Diane's eyes were red-rimmed, her face tight with the strain of trying to hold it together. Richard's shoulders were slumped, the guilt obvious on his face. Behind them stood Amelia, her eyes searching me, full of confusion and hurt. She was caught in the middle of their mess. But I was done fixing things. "What are you doing, Celine?" Diane asked, her voice quivering. "You can't just abandon us. The family needs you. You're breaking us." I stepped back, refusing to let them in. I had built my life here. I had worked so hard to make this space mine, and now they were trying to break it down. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice steady. "I've spent my whole life holding this family together, but it was never enough. You only wanted me when you needed something fixed. You've never seen me for who I am. Only for what I can do for you." Amelia opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "I'm done," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You can't keep using me. Not anymore." Diane's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this. You'll see how this family falls apart without you." I didn't flinch. I was already gone. I stood by the window, my gaze fixed on the skyline of Chicago, but it was the silence that had taken over the room that felt like a weight. It was the kind of quiet that demanded attention, the kind that made you realize how long it had been since you felt truly at peace. The city outside buzzed with life, but inside, I was still navigating the aftershock of everything I had just done. The apartment was still unfamiliar, despite the weeks I had spent in it. There was something about it, the way the sunlight streamed through the windows in the morning, how everything seemed just slightly out of place, that reminded me of the freedom I had been craving for so long. But that freedom came at a cost. And as much as I wanted to focus on the peace I had found, I couldn't shake the guilt that lingered. The family I had walked away from wasn't going to give up easily. I hadn't heard from them since the confrontation, but I knew they wouldn't just let me disappear from their lives. The phone call from Richard was a reminder of that. The voice I had once depended on for comfort now felt like an anchor weighing me down. The weight of it settled in my chest, but I didn't answer. The call wasn't for me. It was for them. I wasn't their savior anymore. I wasn't going back. Still, the gnawing thought that I had torn them apart stuck with me. Was it my fault that they were losing everything? Would they blame me? Would they even understand why I had done it? The news came in waves, quiet at first, but unmistakable once it hit. The headline flashed across my phone: "Family in crisis, daughter abandons family, leaving them to face public shame." The guilt rose in my throat. I had thought it would be easy to walk away. I had convinced myself that this was my time, that I was finally doing what I had to do for my own sanity. But the more I saw their name out there, in the headlines, the more it felt like I had let the world know their dirty secret. Diane's manipulations, Richard's absence, Amelia's blind eye, all of it laid bare for the public to see. They didn't know that I had been fixing their problems for years. They didn't see the sacrifices I made, the years of running on empty to make sure they never had to face the consequences of their actions. The phone rang again, and this time it was Diane. I didn't need to pick up. I knew what she was going to say. It was the same thing every time: the guilt trip, the manipulation, the desperate plea to come back and make it all okay. But I didn't want to make it okay anymore. I could hear the desperation in Richard's voice when he called. This time, there was no anger, no authority. There was just fear. "Celine," he said, his voice breaking, "you've got to come home. We're losing everything. We're about to lose the house. We can't," he choked on his words. "You're the only one who can fix this. If you come back, we can salvage it. You have to come back." I closed my eyes, letting his words hit me like they always did. I could feel the old guilt rising up, but this time, I shoved it back down. I wasn't going to fall for it. Not again. I couldn't keep being the one to carry their weight. "Richard," I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me, "this isn't my problem anymore. You're the one who made it this way. You need to fix it yourself." There was a long pause, and I could hear his breathing, heavy with disbelief. "You'll regret this, Celine," he said, his tone bitter now. "You have no idea what you've set in motion. You're tearing the family apart." I didn't flinch at his words. I had heard them too many times before. "I'm not your scapegoat anymore, Richard," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm done." The line went silent. I hung up, staring at the phone for a long time. I had done it. But the weight of what was happening still lingered. In the days that followed, the media circus picked up speed. Diane took to the press, trying to twist the narrative, trying to make me the villain. "My daughter abandoned me," she said in an interview. "She left us with nothing. We're falling apart." It was a lie, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The story was out, and the world was watching. And then the legal threats came in. Diane had contacted my lawyer, accusing me of being the cause of their financial ruin, trying to turn the tables, to paint me as the one who had destroyed them. The accusations were empty, but I knew what this was, a last-ditch effort to control me, to make me feel responsible for everything they had ruined. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to get me back into the fold, to manipulate me into taking on their problems again. The media loved the story. It was a tragedy, a perfect mix of family drama, financial ruin, and betrayal. But I wasn't going to be part of their story anymore. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the material things. It was everything, how they treated me. The emotional manipulation had been a part of my life for as long as I could remember. But it wasn't until I overheard them, back when I was young, that I realized how deep it ran. I was about 12, sitting in the kitchen, pretending to work on my homework, when I overheard my parents talking in hushed voices. Diane was praising Amelia for her natural charm, for being the one who could bring joy and excitement into their lives. She praised her spontaneity, her spark. And then she said it, Celine's the responsible one, but Amelia has that spark. She's the one with potential. I froze, my pen held still in my hand. I had always known I was the responsible one, but hearing it like this, hearing it from them, it hit me like a punch to the gut. I had tried for so long. I had tried to be the perfect daughter. But I was only valued for what I could do for them. That was the moment I knew, I would never be enough. I wasn't the daughter they wanted. I was just the one they could control. Standing in my apartment, I looked out at the city once again. The skyline shimmered in the distance, but I felt nothing. My decision had been made. I had already set my boundaries. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. Not now, not ever again. I was done being the one who was always expected to carry their burden. I'm not your fixer anymore, I whispered to myself as I looked at the phone on the table. They couldn't control me anymore. They could come at me with everything they had, but they weren't going to win this time. I stood by the window of my apartment, the early morning light creeping in, painting the city in hues of gold. The noise of the world outside, the constant hum of traffic and people, was in stark contrast to the silence that had filled my small space. It wasn't the quiet I had imagined, though. I had thought that once I made my decision, once I finally walked away, I'd feel lighter, unburdened. And in some ways, I did. But the silence. It still echoed. It wasn't freedom yet. It was just the beginning. The weight of my choice hadn't fully sunk in until now. The time had passed, the days blending into one another, and here I was, looking at my reflection in the window, still wondering if it was enough. Would I ever be able to let go of the past? Could I erase the years of sacrifice, of being the one who held everything together, the one who didn't matter unless she was fixing things? I thought about the family I left behind. Diane, Richard, and Amelia. They were still spinning in the chaos I had walked away from. But they weren't just my past, they were my present, too. Or at least, they had been. As I sat at my desk, sifting through the pile of paperwork, the legal documents, the divorce papers that seemed so far away now, a thought struck me. This was freedom. The chance to breathe without feeling like I had to make sure everyone else was okay. I had fought my whole life for space, for my own identity, and now, I had it. But it didn't come without a cost. I opened the laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, and saw the last email I had sent to Diane. The legal team's response to her attempts to get me to come back had been brutal. The accusations, the family's desperation to keep me in line, it was all too much. But it was also too late. I was done being their solution. I ran my fingers over the keys, the weight of the words I had said to my family coming back with full force. But there was something else, too. Something that had shifted inside me. A piece of me had cracked open, and I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. I wasn't the good daughter, the one who held it all together. I was just me, and that was enough. The phone buzzed on the desk, breaking my train of thought. It was Amelia again. Her name flashed across the screen, and I knew what was coming. The same thing she'd been saying for days now. I hadn't answered her last 2 calls. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear her ask me to fix everything. But there she was again, reaching out, trying to pull me back in, as though nothing had changed. I hesitated before answering. What did I want from her? Celine, her voice was softer this time, like she wasn't sure what she wanted to say but was desperate to say something. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. And I don't understand. Why did you leave us? Why did you walk away? I closed my eyes, the pressure of her words settling over me like a heavy blanket. Amelia didn't understand. She never would. You're angry, I get that. But you're breaking everything apart. I don't know what to do without you. Don't you think we need you? It took everything inside me to hold the phone steady, to not scream at her for once again turning it all back on me. I wasn't the one breaking everything apart. They had been doing that for years, long before I ever walked away. They just hadn't noticed until now. I'm not the one breaking anything, Amelia, I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. You don't get it. You never have. I'm not the one who's supposed to fix things for you anymore. I can't carry this weight anymore. You need to learn to stand on your own, just like I had to. I could hear her on the other end, her breath catching as if she was trying to process what I was saying. But I wasn't finished. I've been holding it all together for years, Amelia, I said, my voice shaking slightly. I've been fixing you, fixing all of them. And you know what? It's not my job anymore. I'm done. The line went quiet, and in that moment, I realized just how much I had been drowning in their expectations. For so long, I had been the one who took the responsibility, who kept them afloat. But now, I wasn't that person anymore. And I didn't have to be. I'm done, Amelia, I said, my voice firm. Take care of yourself. I hope one day you'll understand. I ended the call, the silence that followed louder than anything Amelia could have said. I wasn't sure if she understood. But I was done explaining. I didn't know what I expected to happen next. In a way, I thought my family might finally let me go. But I should have known better. Diane's pride wouldn't allow it. And Richard I wasn't sure what he felt, but his actions spoke louder than his words. A few days later, I opened my email to find the family lawyer's response to my final letter. Diane had sent him a copy of everything, the accusations, the threats, the legal demands that I return and fix the damage I had done. But this time, they didn't have the power to control me. The lawyer's response was firm. He had reviewed the documents, seen the manipulation, and made it clear that I wasn't going to be held accountable for their mess. But the shame was still there, lingering, in the form of media coverage. Headlines about our family's collapse circulated, painting me as the daughter who abandoned her family. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to let their shame be my shame. They had created this disaster, not me. It wasn't just about the legal battle anymore. It wasn't about money or reputation. It was about something deeper. My family had spent years defining me by their terms, by their needs. But now, for the first time, I was going to define myself. I was done. The emotional manipulation, the guilt-tripping, it wasn't going to work anymore. I wasn't their fixer, and I was never going back. They had pushed me too far this time, and when they showed up at my door, begging me to come home, it was too late. I'm not your fixer anymore, I said, standing tall in the doorway. I'm done. This family can't control me anymore. Diane's face twisted in anger. You'll regret this, Celine. You'll see what happens when you turn your back on your family. But as I stood there, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I wasn't afraid of their threats. I had already taken back what was mine, my freedom, my self-respect. As I look back on the journey, one thing is clear: sometimes, we have to choose ourselves over everything else. Freedom doesn't come easy. It requires stepping away from the things we've been taught to hold on to, and finding the courage to walk away, even when we feel like we've lost everything. The hardest part: letting go. But in letting go, we give ourselves the chance to finally live. What about you? When was the last time you put yourself first? Have you ever had to walk away from something, or someone, for your own peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.